Om Ajnanatimandasya Chananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chitchetayamanovistam Staptam Yena Bhutale Swamrupkadamyam Dadati Svapadam Trikam Vandeham Shigo Shiyoda Padakamanam Shigam Vaishnavam Shiyopam Jagajatam Sakanaganatam Tam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Bhajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sankalita Satyakam Vitam He Krishna Gona Sindhu Dina Banu Jyatpate Kapapesha Kapapaganta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Kamalaki Radhe Vindavanashve Vishavana Sutadevi Panamama Haripi Banka Kalta Visha Kripas Vipsha Patinam Panibyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shiva Sadika Mudavata Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Krishna Vastaya Mutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachari Tesotami Srila Prabhupada ki. So we continue with our seminar today, the second part, overcoming victim mentality. Get rid of false view. And we will start with the story of someone who was successful in that area. He overcame the empowerment of the mind. That we will look at the realizations of the Avanti Brahman and what his conclusion was at the end. That's the first part today. The second part will go deeper in this victim mentality. So the Avanti Brahman means he was living in Avanti. Avanti is today Ujjain, and I'm every year there, practically a month now, because we have an ISKCON temple there, started in 2007. Bhaktishara Maharaj built his temple in 2007 in 11 months. Was quite a feat, an achievement. But of course, Ujjain is known for the worship of Lord Shiva. That's also Ujjain is known. They can tell that they are a little more silent. So Ujjain, the name was before Avanti. Today it's known also for the Kumbh Mela. Every 12 years is the Kumbh Mela in Ujjain. In 4 places is the Kumbh Mela. That's one of the 4 places. That it was just a few years ago, was very busy there. And it's also the place of the Gurukul of Sandipani Muni, where Krishna and Balaram was educated, Ujjain. The ashram of, Sandipani Muni is still in Ujjain. I visited it, and it's a beautiful place. And Krishna and Balaram has learned there's 64 aids and 64 arts. And for each art there is a painting, 6 meters or 4 meters, very big, very nice. But also the Brahmin here, and that he was from Avanti. And he was a merchant, agriculturist, it's here. And he was quite wealthy, that he amassed a lot of wealth. He was a Brahmin and was worshipping the Lord. But still he was very greedy, not really the quality of a Brahmin, anyway. And he would give his family's members not a pinch of sense gratification, just what they needed. Therefore, he was not very popular, that his family members hated him. So, but he lived in Avanti. Avanti is also the place, but that goes much further in the history. But that's good. Goes back to the story of Lord Jagannath, the king who brought Lord Jagannath to the, who is involved in the history of Lord Jagannath. What his name is also from Avanti. Indradyumna, yeah, that was the king. He was the king of Avanti, yes, Avantipura. Anyway, that's long ago. But this Brahmin, yes, he was extremely greedy, miserly, and sometimes angry. Yeah, if you are greedy, you become angry. That miserly and angry. So, because he didn't give a pinch of sense enjoyment to his family members, his wife, his daughters, and relatives had no enjoyment, and they became inimical towards him. But then what happened? By providence, because he treated his family members not nicely. His family members were stealing a part of his wealth, and by Krishna's arrangement, his warehouse burned out. He lost everything in a very short time. And then he had no property anymore. Everyone abandoned him, and he became overwhelmed, and that's interesting, with a powerful feeling of renunciation. That he understood all this wealth has brought me only misery. Became frustrated, and he wanted to give it up. He became renounced. That's interesting. Krishna is learning him a lesson. That because he was a devotee, he wants to make spiritual advancement, but he became attached to wealth. And then Krishna made the arrangement that he lost everything. That's Krishna's mercy. But what happened is interesting. He wandered about the earth. keeping his intelligence, senses, and life under control. Yes, and he was begging charity. And he was traveling from village to village and to cities. But what happened? What happened is that he had a terrible karma by his greediness and probably also from previous lives. What happened? So some persons took away sannyasot and some the water which he was using to beg, and which he was using as a begging bowl. Yeah. Some took his deerskin seat, some his chanting beads, some would steal his stone-wrapped clothing. So he went to so much misery. One misery after another. So finally, when he was sitting on the bank of a river about to partake the food that he had collected by his begging, some sinful rascals would come and urinate on his food and spit on his head. Heavy treatment. And so they would criticize him and says, you are just a hypocrite. You are making a business of religion because you lost all your wealth and your family thrown you out. And some persons would pass full air upon him, and some others would bind the Brahmin in chains and keep him captive like a pet animal. Very excellent. But then he understood all my suffering I get from other living beings, so suffering coming from nature, from my own body, unavoidable. It was allotted to me by providence as a reaction of my previous actions. And he accepted it. So even while being insulted, nevertheless, he continues his sadhana, his worship of the Lord, his chanting and so on. He continued his spiritual duties. But then, that is his conclusion. He understood that all these people who came to him and who caused him this distress, they are not really the cause of my happiness and distress. Also not the demigods who control nature. Also not my body. Also not the planets. Also not my karma or my time. It is the mind alone that causes happiness and distress. Only the mind. It's experience in the mind, and we identify with the mind. That's an important conclusion. That's all happiness and distress comes from our mind. So although present along with the mind in the material body, the body is not endeavoring. Acting as my friend is simply witnesses from his transcendental position. So that's Bhagavad Gita. That's in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is the witness. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Nada teka chit papam, nacheva sukhitam. I'm not responsible for the happiness and distress of the living entity. No. That's the supersoul just gives the reactions, and happens in these stages. These reactions, it's felt in the mind. It's only the mind. So I, on the other hand, have embraced this mind. He says, that's the point. I've identified with this mind, which is a mirror reflecting the image of the material world. Thus I have become entangled due to contact with the modes. We identify with the mind, we contact the modes. That's yeah. So that's an interesting question. We will stop the sharing here. Can we stop this for the moment? No screen for the moment. Later you can put it on. Okay. So that is a story of the anti-department. Now, what is that to do with this victim mentality? Victim mentality is produced by the mind. That's the point. What is a victim mentality? Someone feels that bad things keep happening to me. No matter what. There are three things we believe. What are three things that are the cause of this victim mentality? Bad things happen to me, no matter what I do. That's what the mind invents. Or bad things happen to me, and it's the fault of others, not my fault. Or I can't change what is happening. So the question is, are we also suffering from that mentality? This person has done something to me. And the mind focuses on that. It becomes a whole meditation and starts to see this bad. Then the mind projects bad qualities in that person. And we see only these bad qualities. So this person is these bad qualities. So yes. Are we automatically, if something happens, someone does something to us, we are going in the worst scenario with our mind? Many times it happens. And what's our response? We are responding usually to our perception of the situation. What we perceive. This victim mentality is the problem of false ego. That a false identity. A false identity we have constructed in our mind. Now we construct the whole world practice in our minds. That you are a child and someone says, oh, this is a chair. Who has given that name? Chair. That someone must have given. Yes?
So is it just a subjective reality? It's personal to what happened?
It's subjective, but it's not reality. But, reality is on the spiritual platform. But yes, but the cause of our suffering is not other people, but our attachment to the mind and these false perceptions. What's the conclusion here of this Avanti Brahma? Not in the 11th canto, chapter 23, which is the story of Avanti Brahma, text 42. Nayam chaname sukha dukkha hetu na devatam tatma kalma kala mana param kalanam amananti samsara shakam vaivaktayetat yat. These people are not the cause of my happiness and distress. All these people who had mistreated them, they are not the cause of my happiness and distress. Neither are the demigods. I am my own body, the planets past work or time. Rather, it is the mind alone that causes happiness and distress and perpetuates the rotation of material life. So the mind tells us, this will give you pleasure, happiness, that you should accept. And that will give you pain. You should be averse of it, reject it. That's what the mind does. And it's all to do with the body. So when we blame others, that means we are acting as a condition. So we interpret all our situations, all our circumstances in terms of this false ego, this body, and the idea we have about this body. And the idea was good or bad, which is proposed by the mind. And by that, the false ego concludes, I'm a victim. So we become entrapped in this mentality. We cannot look at anything objectively. It's not possible. And this mentality takes us to the extent that we will blame Krishna for what is going wrong with us. We are revolting against this plan. So due to our attachment in the mind, we become attached to a particular type of experience. We become attached to certain emotions, to certain qualities in the mind. So we take the reality and filter it through the lens of false ego. That's what we are doing. Through the lens of false ego. If there's no false ego, we see reality. There's no filter. The filter is a false ego. It goes to that, to our perceptions. And we are completely reinterpreting the reality in terms of that false ego. And then we conclude, yes, I'm right. That, yes. Mm-hmm. So, in that way, everything we perceive in this world increases the fire of our mental suffering. If we filter that through this false ego. But as long as we have that false ego, the filter is there. You cannot just take it out. No, it's there. Therefore, it's very important to disassociate from the mind and weaken our connection with it. But that's not an easy thing, and factually, so it's impossible. That's in the Bhagavatam. There you have this was a question. Buddha asked that question to Krishna. But then Krishna told a story. That same question was asked by the Kumaras, or Kumaras to Brahma. What was that question? That question was, the mind is associated with everything what it perceives in its world. So all the objects of the senses, they come into the mind. So there's a connection between the mind and all the objects. Is that clear? They come into the mind. We see everything to the mind. How can we break that connection? That was a question of the four Kumaras. And Brahma adds four heads, big intelligence. That and what did Brahma say? I don't know. I can't answer this question. But then, if Brahma is no solution, then Brahma prayed to the Lord, and the Lord appeared as Hamsa Avatar. Hamsa Avatar. And he's answering the question of the four commands. Not immediately, there are a few things between. But what is his answer? Someone knows? Can we break the connection between the mind and object of the senses? Yeah,
but there is no connection. Is it?
No. There is a connection between the objects of the senses and the mind. Because objects of the senses we perceive in the mind. So can that be broken? What's the solution?
Be the right object towards Krishna.
Say that again.
Put the direction, the sense object become Krishna, so the mind can become purified.
Yes, but that will not solve the problem. The connection remains. Hamsa Avatar says, this connection cannot be broken. The mind and object of the sense are intimately related. It's not possible. So what is then the solution? Yes? This? I don't understand. It's too far.
What is samadhi?
Samadhi.
Yeah, isn't that disconnection of mind?
Samadhi is meditation of the absolute truth. But there is a connection there. So, in Uddhava Gita it's explained, Krishna says, the only way to solve the problem is that you always think of me in devotional service and forget about this mind. You use the mind to always engaging the mind in devotional service. Then the mind is occupied, it's busy. It's not busy. Then this connection between the objects and the object of the senses in the mind, they have no effect. So we must get out of it by connecting with Krishna.
Similar to the story we had yesterday about group eight that you had, and then your friend came and you forgot about that because you switched your mind.
Yes. If we are completely absorbed in our service to Krishna, then the mind is busy. We don't have, and this connection comes harmless. Anyway, that's a side point. But Krishna, was the advice here from Krishna to Uddhava? Because, yes, we are seeing everything through this false ego. We filter it. So what we perceive in this world is always subjective. And the subjectivity is our lens for false ego. And a false ego can be more in passion, can be more in ignorance, can be different qualities. That's so many varieties. So what to do? Krishna advises Uddhava. Tasmat sarvatmana tata nishvehana manudhiya maya vasitaya yukta etavan yoga sangraha. My dear Uddhava, fix your intelligence on me. You should thus completely control the mind. This is the essence of the science of yoga. So that's the solution. Krishna says, fix your intelligence on me. The point is, true to the false ego, the mind makes up a whole story and is so strong that it overcomes the intelligence and uses the intelligence to execute the plans of the mind. And then it becomes suffering. Therefore, Krishna says at the end of the 3rd chapter, you should know that higher than the mind, which is the stable of the senses, is the intelligence, and higher than the intelligence is the soul. And therefore, you should, by transcendental knowledge, that is what Krishna says, fixing your intelligence on me. With that transcendental knowledge, how to perform devotional service. You control the mind by engaging the mind in devotional service. And then it's busy. Then this connection between the mind and the senses may still be there, but it becomes harmless. It's not going to overpower you anymore. Yes.
When you say powerless, it makes me think like the snake and there's no poison. Poison is not effective. Is it in the same metaphor?
Yeah, we can use that metaphor for that also. The poison is taken out of the fangs, the serpent. That, yeah. Then, now we will go a little deeper in the workings of the mind. The mind is incredibly capable of making the impossible seem possible. The mind starts to pick different words from a conversation and starts to focus on them. And in this way, it completely distorts reality and makes us believe in something that is not true. So it starts to pick up, you see a fault in someone, this person has done that to me, he's like that. So, and in a conversation, the mind gets all the points that confirm that. There are much more points, but those are points of the mindset, that's what I need. And you see it's true, it's confirmed, yes. That's what the mind does. So even if the advice or conversation was for our benefit, we start seeing it as something designed to put us down and blame us. So we start doubting the intentions of others. We are starting doubting our own self-worth. It's disempowering. That's a dangerous path to do such a thing. Because there is a need to get the attention of others, to get the sympathy of others. So what's the best way to do it? Being a victim? Show anyone that, look what they have done to me. It's a strong manifestation of false ego. Yeah, we have also false ego, like in 4, Canto 4, chapter 8, text 34, there, Narada Muni says to Dhruva Maharaj, he speaks about the behavior of a gentle person. If a gentle person meets someone who is more elevated than him, then the gentle person will be submissive to that person and try to learn from that person. And when a gentle person meets someone who is equal, then he will make friendship. And if a gentle person meets someone who is less advanced, he will try to elevate that person. But a person who is not gentle means false ego. What does he do? He sees someone more elevated than him and he becomes envious. Why he? And why does he become envious? Because he puts himself in the center. I'm better. So why he? And when he sees someone equal, he thinks, yes, that boost and propagate all what I have done and show that I'm better. And when a person with a strong false ego thinks that he meets someone who is less qualified, he thinks, I'm better. Just is nothing, put him down. That's all false ego. That's the idea I'm better. I'm this, I'm that. So, but when the mind is conditioned in this way, what happens with the intelligence? The intelligence becomes a slave of that condition of the mind, a slave. Instead of the mind, of the intelligence giving directions to the mind, it starts dancing to the instructions of the mind and follow the instructions of the mind. It leads to craziness. Srila Prabhupada explains that in the Bhagavad Gita, in the purport of 634. Sometimes, he says, the mind overcomes one's own intelligence, as an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of the medicine. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this. Intelligence is like a sharp needle. Even the very sharp needle of the intelligence cannot pierce the strong mind any more than a needle can forcibly pierce iron. So the intelligence which has been overpowered by the mind works in a way that assists the working of the mind. And the soul is just a zombie. That the soul identifies with the mind, that I am. Yeah. This is deep psychology. That's the spiritual psychology of the Bhagavatam that we are learning. That not easy to understand. But the intelligence has been empowered when it has been overpowered by the mind, is working to fulfill the plans of the mind. That can be a retaliation or depression, so many things. And that false ego is the source of all depressions, for sure. If someone is very fearful by nature, even if there is nothing in the environment to fear, the intelligence will invent something. One becomes fearful. It will create an experience or situation so that one sees things around him and sees danger everywhere. So suffering is due to the strong identification with the mind. It's all about I, false I. I'm a victim. And we blame others for distress, for our distress. But when we start doing that, we continue factually our suffering in this world. Because spiritual consciousness means the fault lies in me. That's the beginning. A humble devotee, if something goes wrong, thinks always the fault lies in me. Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture somewhere in India, and there was a Brahmin, and he started to shout to Prabhupada, and he became very angry to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, after the lecture, said, I must have done something to him in my previous life. So it is self-inflicted suffering that we bring upon ourselves. And that's all due to identification with the mind. Not controlling the mind, following the mind. we become too much self-focused. If we are self-focused, we cannot absorb ourselves in Krishna. If you think if the mind wanders, it has all to do with I mind. False I mind. Yeah. The only thing that the soul has is consciousness. That's all, that's ours. And even that is polluted. Yes.
What happens when we try to do a sadhana and then eventually it feels like the mind overcomes the whole being, and then is it a question of doing more sadhana, or is there, for some people, a pathology?
It is a process. And the solution we will discuss tomorrow. Today we try to understand the problem. And it's important to deeply understand the problem. And then the solution we'll discuss tomorrow. But the false ego keeps putting ourselves always in the center. If we are in the center, if we put ourselves in the center of our consciousness, surely Krishna is not in the center. We can either be absorbed in ourselves or in Krishna, in our false selves. Yeah. So we must always remember humility means, what does humility mean? Yes.
Just to understand, is there different kinds of victim mentality? For example, some people decide that they don't want to accept responsibility for their actions, and they can not be victim, but start blaming others. Maybe there's also another kind of victim when it comes from like sort of enjoyment with that rasa of suffering. It's like a bit tamaduna thing that someone inflicts pain on himself or herself just to kind of, because of the taste for that pain.
How do we create false ego? That's explained in the Bhagavatam. In the 13th chapter. I'm just giving you the verse. It goes to the essence of the problem. Let's see. Okay. 13:22. Purusa pragatistri bhunkte pragatajan gunan karanam gunasangasya satsajoni janmasya. The living entity material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. Enjoying. Bhunkte pragatajan gunan. That's how we connect with material nature. We want to enjoy material nature. And being the enjoyer, thinking ourselves the enjoyer is false ego. We are not the enjoyer, we are the servant of Krishna. And that's the root cause. Therefore, in the previous verse, and that's what I'm explaining here, it's also in Bhagavad Gita. In the previous verse, Karya Karana Kartitve Hetur Pragatiuchate Purusatu Kadukaranam Bhaktitve Duchate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Just by the mind we create these sufferings and this enjoyment. VK18-1. But it comes all on this pulse ego. Bhunte prakti chang. That's the point. But that is not a humble position, Bhunte prakti chang. That's taking Krishna's position and put myself in the center. That is not humble. So, therefore, if we want to think less of ourselves, we must practice humility. Humility means thinking less of yourself. It doesn't mean low self-esteem, no. It means that we are not focused on ourselves. That's humility. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya said the formula is Trinan Vishnitsin Dara Vishnitsin Mana Mana Kirtanya Sadhavi. Without being humble, it's not able to, one is not able to chant holy names. You are not humble, you put yourself in the center. Anyway, tomorrow evening we will discuss the solution. But before we close, I want to recap again what I've told you now. Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, I have a question. One day, one man, I guess, was very honest.
Yeah.
And one month after, and the thing again, he gave me a big argument for my question is, do you think that if we send like a positive energy or a small discussion that you
Thank you for your point that what happens in a certain situation has to do with the intricacies of karma, and that's very difficult to understand. But the thing you did certainly very good is by not reacting, by not becoming angry, just as let a person do, and you stay calm. Just you accept it. You accept it. This is my karma. Tatena kampam sasamachana punchatme vaktakitam vipakam ritvakva provirvidadana stage vetyu muktipadesraiva. That's what Brahma says. If you just accept the reactions of your karma as Krishna's mercy, and you say to Krishna, you give me only a bit. Then when he's ready for liberation, Krishna says. So that is the characteristic of a Paramahamsa, factually. When you can do that. And you did it, that's very good. And that may have changed the heart of this person. That may have an effect. If you had become angry, then you become entangled again, and so on. And again, karma. And it will not help the person. And besides that, when you become angry, will it help you? No, it's not helpful. That's just for me. Thank you for sharing.
I think is that one of the abilities is absorbing Krishna is like a swallow that is in here.
Yeah, that's Paramahamsa.
Attitude like a swallow doesn't get
Yeah, we that is also the example that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. If you are Krishna conscious, then you are like a lotus. Lotus leaf, the water falls of it. It doesn't impregnate. It rolls the drop and falls from the leaf. So in the same way, if we act in Krishna consciousness, we are not affected by the reactions of karma. That no reactions, that we become immune to the material energy. Okay. Yes.
There ever a good moment or a good reason to get angry at someone?
That you can do that if it's in the service of Krishna. But if you become angry out of frustration, that's not a good reason. That's a bad reason. The good reason, if it is in Krishna's service. When Prabhupada was in Mayapur. His quarters were just finished on the third floor of the Lotus building. His room is still there. And at that time already we had, it was 1972, 73, I don't know exactly. But that's in a Prabhupada in Amrita. And at that time already we had we were using security guards, and they did a certain tour in a certain path they had to follow, and at a certain time they had to be at a certain place. At a certain time they had to be the security guard had to be before Srila Prabhupada's quarters. And Prabhupada just arrived at that time, and the security guard was not there. And Prabhupada said, "Get me this guard." And when the guard came into his room, before he came in, Navyogendra was with him. And Prabhupada came into the room. When the guard came into the room, and Prabhupada suddenly started very angry to shout in Bengali. And Navayogendra, at that time, he was not yet a sannyasi, but he was just near to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was so angry. He was really shivering. But then the guard went outside. And Prabhupada became very calm, like nothing happened before. So he controlled the anger. He used the anger in Krishna's service. And that is an example where anger can be used. Anger can also be used if a devotee is attacked by someone. Arjuna needed a lot of anger to fight. Without anger, you cannot fight. Good. Okay.
Is it? I can ask tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we have still 2 questions, and then we will finish, and we do the recap tomorrow.
Okay. As you said, Maharaj, to get rid of the bridge of the mind and the senses, we must engage in be absorbed in the service.
Yeah, engage the mind. Engage the mind. Engage the mind. Make sure it's busy.
And so to be tolerant, do we have to be absorbed to be able to be tolerant, you have to be absorbed in how to be tolerant. You have to be like a reserve, like of energy that helps you to kind of have a protection to not react?
Tolerant, that how to cultivate tolerance. Like Roma said always, that it's like a weightlifter. He doesn't start with the biggest weight, but with a lightweight, and he builds up. So tolerance we have to build up. That the more you practice devotional service, and gradually your tolerance level will increase. That because we may not be tolerant because we are under control of the mind. But gradually we get that control. Because the mind will say, you're fasting today, I don't want to fast. Or the mind said, I want sweets. It becomes very strong, the mind begins to meditate on it. And if you don't give sweets, the mind becomes very sour. It's a whole thing that Anand said, if the mind is in that situation, it wants sweets, then you tell the mind, I give you a bit, and that's it. Like a child, that's it. Yeah, we have to train the mind, training the mind. That requires tolerance. Okay. Yeah. Last question.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned that our intelligence can be affected or even possessed by our mind up to the extent we become as a zombie, right? So that intelligence is fully under control of mind, and it can be like hard to observe, like at least to see that or notice that this is actually happening. Are there some indicators, some like phenomena that I can tell, okay, I'm being misled by my mind? So it's an easy way to be misled, right? So in other words, is there indicators that can help me understand if I'm mistaken or misled by my mind instead?
Well, first of all, we must know that in a normal situation, the soul must direct the intelligence. How does the soul direct the intelligence? What does the soul do? We said yesterday, the symptom of the soul is consciousness. And what does the soul do? Desire or attachment. So, and the soul directs the intelligence with attachment. That I desire this or that. I become attached to this or that. So, but the soul must cultivate spiritual attachment. And therefore, the mind must be filled with transcendental knowledge, how to act as a spirit soul. And then the mind becomes attached to it. It said, do that. And then the intelligence engages the mind and senses. And that's the normal situation. That if that normal situation is there, then the intelligence and mind, they act independently from the soul. Okay? And the soul is then what I call the zombie. It's just going with the flow. And that's the problem. Like I explained many times, the senses, the sight of a beautiful woman comes into the mind, by false ego, we think I'm a man. And then that attraction is there. And then the senses push the mind to want satisfaction. And the mind said, yes, that's a good idea. Let's use the intelligence to make plans for that. And the soul is a zombie. It's going with the flow. But the soul has to direct the intelligence by attachment. Attachment to Krishna, attachment to make spiritual advancement, attachment to get free from birth, death, and old age. But therefore, the intelligence needs transcendental knowledge. Therefore, we must hear about Krishna. The more we hear, the more we effectively can direct the mind and the senses. That's the principle. Does that help? Good. Thank you very much. We will continue tomorrow. Jai Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.